It was the eve of the great festival when Amina decided she could no longer ignore the whispers in her heart. She stood at the edge of the village, watching the sun set behind the mountains, her heart pounding in her chest. The air was thick with anticipation, for the next day would mark the beginning of the sacred thunder dance, an ancient tradition in which the villagers danced in hopes of pleasing the thunder god and ensuring peace for another year. But Amina had no intention of joining in the dance this year. Instead, she had made a secret decision to challenge the thunder god himself. She had heard tales of a great thunderstorm that once ravaged the village, leaving behind only ruins and loss. It was said that only a brave soul could stand before the thunder god and survive his judgment. She believed that the time had come for her to uncover the truth about the god who had haunted her people for generations. As the night deepened and the sounds of the festival echoed in the distance, Amina slipped away from her home, walking toward the ancient oak tree where the elders said the thunder god made his presence known. With each step, the air grew colder and the sky darkened, as if the very heavens themselves were aware of her intentions. Reaching the tree, Amina stood beneath its twisted branches and called out to the thunder god, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "I challenge you, thunder god. Show yourself to me. I seek answers, not fear." At first, there was nothing. No rumbling, no flashes of light, just the stillness of the night. But then, as if in response to her words, the wind began to howl, and the clouds above began to swirl. The air crackled with electricity, and Amina felt a sudden rush of power surge through her veins. She knew then that the thunder god was near. "You seek answers, child." A deep voice boomed from above, causing the ground to tremble beneath her feet. "But know this, the answers you seek may come at a great cost." Amina stood her ground, her heart pounding but her resolve unwavering. "I am not afraid," she declared. "I want to know the truth about my people and their curse. Why does the thunder god rule over us?" There was a long silence before the voice spoke again, this time softer, almost sorrowful. "The truth you seek is buried deep in the past, hidden away by those who came before you. But be warned, child, uncovering the truth will not bring peace. It will awaken a long-forgotten power, a force that has lain dormant for centuries." Amina's eyes narrowed. "I do not fear the past. If the truth lies within it, then I will face it." With those words, the ground shook once more, and a bolt of lightning shot down from the heavens, striking the earth at her feet. The air around her crackled with energy, and Amina felt a strange sensation as if the very fabric of reality had torn open. She was no longer standing beneath the oak tree. Instead, she found herself in a vast, darkened plain, the sky above filled with swirling storm clouds. In the distance, a figure emerged from the storm. The thunder god. He was enormous, his body crackling with raw energy, his eyes glowing with a fierce light. Amina stood tall, unyielding in her stance. "You dare challenge me, mortal?" The thunder god's voice thundered, shaking the ground beneath her. Amina's voice was steady as she replied, "I seek the truth about my ancestors. I want to know why my people are bound to you in fear." The thunder god's gaze softened, and he sighed. "It is not your fault, child. The curse that binds your people was placed long ago by your own bloodline." Amina's mind raced as the thunder god spoke those words. Her ancestors. She had always heard that her people had a strong connection to the gods, but she never imagined that her own bloodline could be the cause of the curse that had plagued them for so long. "What do you mean?" Amina asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What did my ancestors do?" The thunder god's form shifted, and before her stood a vision from the past, a young woman, her face familiar yet foreign. Amina gasped as she recognized the woman as her great-grandmother, a legendary figure who had been said to possess great power in her youth. The vision showed her grandmother standing before the thunder god, her face filled with defiance. "She, your great-grandmother, was the one who sealed the curse," the thunder god explained. "Long ago, when your people were prosperous and free, there was a time of great conflict. Your ancestors sought to harness the power of the storms, to control the very forces of nature. They made a pact with me, an agreement to grant them power in exchange for their loyalty. But your great-grandmother, in her ambition, sought to betray me. She tried to steal my power, to use it for her own gain." Amina felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she watched the vision unfold. Her great-grandmother had betrayed the thunder god? The thought seemed impossible. The woman had always been revered as a hero. But why would she do that? Amina asked, her voice barely a whisper. The thunder god's eyes darkened. Greed. Power. She believed that by controlling the storms, she could rule the world. But she underestimated the consequences of her actions. As punishment, I cursed your bloodline. Each generation would be bound to the storms, forever at my mercy. Amina struggled to process the weight of this revelation. Her people's suffering, their reverence for the thunder god, had all been born from her great-grandmother's betrayal. And now, she was standing before the very force that had cursed them. You could break the curse, the thunder god said, his voice growing softer. But it will come at a great cost. To undo the damage, your bloodline must make a sacrifice. A true sacrifice, one that will erase the stain of your ancestors' greed. Amina's heart raced. She had heard of sacrifices in the old tales, but they were always shrouded in mystery. The thought of giving up something so precious, could she truly do it? Amina stood in silence, the weight of the thunder god's words pressing heavily upon her. To break the curse, she would have to sacrifice something dear to her, something irreplaceable. But what could she possibly offer in exchange for the peace of her people? As she pondered, the thunder god's form began to dissolve into the storm, his voice echoing in her mind. The choice is yours, Amina. Choose wisely. Amina closed her eyes, allowing the storm's energy to flow through her, connecting her to the land, her people, and her ancestors. She could feel the presence of her great-grandmother, the powerful woman who had dared to challenge the thunder god. She could sense the anger and the regret that had lingered in her bloodline for generations. And then she knew. Amina understood what needed to be done. The storm howled around Amina, the winds roaring like the voices of countless ancestors who had come before her. Her mind was clear now, and the truth she had uncovered weighed heavily upon her heart. The thunder god had offered her a choice, to break the curse and free her people, but only at a cost, a sacrifice that would erase the stain of her great-grandmother's betrayal. She could feel the weight of that choice pressing on her chest, each breath harder than the last. She knew what had to be done. It wasn't just about breaking the curse. It was about restoring balance, not only to her people but to her bloodline. The pain of her ancestors' sins would be cleansed, but in return, she would have to offer something irreplaceable, a part of herself that could never be returned. Amina closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of a storm beneath her feet. The thunder god's voice came again, quieter this time, like the rumble of distant thunder. Do you understand what you must give up, Amina? Once this bond is broken, it cannot be undone. What will you sacrifice? Amina's mind flashed to her family, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the comfort of her grandmother's wisdom. She thought of the village, her people, their hopes and dreams for a peaceful life, free from the wrath of the storms. And she thought of the power within her, a power she had inherited from her ancestors, a power that connected her to the thunder god himself. It was the same power that had given her the courage to challenge him. But this power was also the source of her curse. It was her inheritance, one that had been passed down through generations of women in her family. And now, she knew what the sacrifice had to be. She stepped forward, her voice steady as she spoke the words that would change everything. I offer you the very thing that binds me to this power, the essence of my bloodline. I give you my connection to the storm, my gift and my curse. Take it, and with it, take the storms that have haunted my people for centuries. The air grew still. The clouds above seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the thunder god's response. And then the storm erupted. Lightning struck the ground before her once more, this time so close that Amina could feel the heat of it on her skin. The power of the storm surged through her, but instead of tearing her apart, it seemed to flow into her very soul. The thunder god's voice rumbled, deep and powerful. You are willing to give up everything, to erase your connection to the storm, the very force that flows through your veins. Amina nodded, her heart resolute. I am. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the thunder god spoke again, his voice softer now, almost respectful. Very well, child. Your sacrifice is great, but it is worthy. The storm will leave your bloodline, and your people will be free. But know this, there is no return from this path. Once the curse is lifted, You will no longer be bound to the storms. Your bloodline will be forever changed. Amina felt the power surge through her one last time, and then, like a floodgate opening, the energy of the storm was released. It poured from her body, leaving her feeling lighter, freer, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The wind died down, and the clouds above parted, revealing the clear night sky once more. The thunder god's form slowly dissipated, leaving Amina standing alone in the vast plain, her heart pounding with the intensity of the moment. She had done it. She had broken the curse. When Amina returned to the village, the storm had subsided. The once darkened skies were now clear, and the air was filled with an unfamiliar sense of calm. She felt different, lighter, as though a great burden had been lifted from her soul. The villagers, who had gathered to perform the thunder dance, noticed the change immediately. The heavy tension that had always hung over their celebrations was gone, replaced by a peaceful energy that seemed to flow from the earth itself. Amina did not speak of the challenge she had faced, nor of the sacrifice she had made. Instead, she quietly resumed her role in the village, helping her mother with her seamstress work and honoring the memory of her great-grandmother in the ways she knew best. But deep inside, she carried the knowledge of a storm that had raged within her, and the power she had relinquished to bring peace to her people. Over time, the villagers began to speak of Amina with reverence. They noticed the change in the air, the way the winds no longer howled with anger, the way the storm seemed to move on without leaving devastation in their wake. They did not know of the thunder god's curse, or the sacrifice Amina had made. They only knew that the land had been freed from the storms, and peace had returned to their lives. Amina's legacy became one of courage and sacrifice, a reminder of the power of choice. She had faced the gods themselves, and had chosen to give up the very thing that defined her bloodline in order to save her people. And in doing so, she had broken a curse that had lasted for generations. But Amina knew that the true power was not in the storms that had once bound her to the thunder god, but in the strength of her heart. She had chosen the path of peace, and in the quiet moments that followed, she would find her true connection to the world, not in the storms, but in the love and unity of her people. As the years passed, the story of Amina, the young maiden who had challenged the thunder god, became a legend, whispered in the winds that now carried no anger, only the songs of the ancestors who had long since passed. And in the hearts of the people, the legacy of her sacrifice lived on, a story of bravery, selflessness, and the enduring power of choice.